Hey guys, and we are live again. So, how are you finding these corona times? I went to Tesco's today. Oh my god, I wish I hadn't bothered going. My mum's in the, what do they call it? The at-risk group. So, I said to her, yeah, that's fine. I'll nip down to Tesco's for you. Oh my god, I've never seen anything like it. It's just madness. People grabbing everything and only being allowed in so many at a time, and you can't. Oh, I came back and said to her, that is it. I'm done. I'm never shopping again unless I really, really have to. Anyway, guys, so tonight I thought that we would have a look at a bit more radio. Before you're grown, this is real radio with real people. It's basically on the HF band, so we're going to look at 7 megs and the 7 meg band. So let's get, there's the radio. She's already on 7 megahertz. So before we do that, I'm going to just show you something quickly. If I can find my mouse. There we go. So with all the different radio authorities in the world, we have the RSGB, and they basically lobby for amateur radio users' rights, and they do a lot for us. They're the ones that ensure that we are still allocated the frequencies via the government and all the rest of it, because radio space is worth an absolute fortune. And we're very lucky, because when you pass your amateur radio license, you're actually granted a little tiny bit of space, but across an awful lot of the spectrum. So we've got bands right through from 3 megahertz, in fact below that 1.8, and I think there's one below that as well, right the way up into gigahertz. And you can apply for what's called a notice of variation, or a NOV, to your license to go up into terahertz if you so wish. And yes, there are people working up in terahertz for amateur radio purposes. Anyway, the RSGB break up the band. I don't know if you can see this here. This is what's called a band plan. Now, this is just guidance. It's not enshrined in law or anything like that. But it makes sense, because if everybody's grouped into certain little snippets of the band, then we can all do our own thing. We don't interfere with each other. All the guys that want to play with Morse go down one end. Then you've got your data. You've got your data and single sideband. That's what this, if you look on here, it says SSB. That means single sideband. And then again, we've got a complete block of the band here from 7.06 megahertz to 7.13 megahertz, which is all single sideband. In fact, it goes up to 7.2. So that's all sideband. So that's where, so down here, CW is where you're going to hear Morse code. Data is where you're going to hear data, the digital modes, like the one we did the other night. Here you can have a mix of some voice, or some audio, voice audio, and some data. And then from 7.06 up to 7.2, you're just going to have people talking. Above 7.2, you start going into commercial radio stations that are, it's a great place to listen, actually. Well, we might listen into a few and see what we can hear. So, without further ado, I thought what we'd do to start with is we'd just have a quick whiz through the band and see what we can hear. So let's get... I'm going to introduce you to a piece of software as well called Radio Deluxe, which is this. Actually, that's a DM780. So let's just hide that for a sec. So this is a piece of software called Radio Deluxe. Basically, what it does is it allows you to control your radio from the comfort of your armchair. So nowadays, we don't actually have to have the radio in front of us twiddling knobs. We can actually just scroll a mouse. So if I scroll the mouse, you'll see that the radio changes and follows whatever I do with the mouse. It's quite a clever system. Now you'll notice if I tune this last one, nothing appears to happen on the radio. And that's because actually the radio is more sensitive than the display tells you. So we can actually do some very, very fine tuning here in Radio Deluxe. So without further ado, what we will do is I'm going to turn it down a little bit because otherwise it's going to be unbearable. So you can now hear the noise of the radio. Now that's probably, hopefully it's not too annoying, but we're going to scroll through the band. Oh, I've moved the camera. Oh, shouldn't have done that. So we'll scroll through this band and see what's going on. So if we do it probably on that one, would give us reasonable resolution. So we've got our first Morse code station there. Just turn it up a little bit. And he's down in the band, the section of the band devoted to Morse code. There's another one. He's not quite as good, he's a bit slower. Oh, there's a really fast one in the background there. So you get the idea. So if we keep going. Oh, there's a strong one. So the bands are actually quite alive, especially for Morse. There's always Morse going on. So let's get through the Morse section of the band. And normally that's the data section, so there's some data noises. Sounds like some radio teletype going on there. So what we'll do now is we'll whiz up a bit further. See if we can hear some real conversations. We can use this little slider here and just slide up the band if you find that easier. In fact, we'll take the top one because that's slightly faster. Sounds like a UK-based station there.
At the moment, my electronic log is not going in properly. The decimal point on the frequency readout is not going in the right place, and I can put it everywhere else rather than where it should be. So it's I hate computers. I don't like CW, and I would never go Digimost either.
Having a good old chat there. So, that sounds like a UK operator. Let's keep going. Some more data. Wait for him to transmit again. There's definitely somebody there then. Let me turn this up so you guys can hear it too. It's all about fine-tuning.
Your call? Echo Alpha 5, India Sierra Zulu. India Sierra Zulu. Good evening, nice to meet you. My name is Trev, Tango Romeo Echo Trev. And you're also private.
So you see the band is actually quite alive, which is really nice to see. So this is used. Now I'm going to show you something else. Let me just mute that radio a second. Now I'm going to turn this down as well. Let me bring up the second window. Sorry, there's a lot of stuff going on here. So if we bring up that one. So with HF communication, the way this works, a lot of HF stuff, the reason it's got such a great range is because below a certain frequency, and generally the cutoff is around about 30 megahertz, depending on the conditions. The way it works is that the sun shines onto the ionosphere of the planet, that heats up, and as it heats up, the gas layers do basically become like a mirror for radio. So that means that below 30 megahertz, your radio signal comes out of your antenna, goes up to the sky, hits this ionized radiation layer, and then skips back down onto the planet somewhere. Now, that's really useful. That's called skip propagation. And the skip distance is the distance between your antenna and the antenna that you're transmitting to via this long skip path. Now, as the sun heats up more, that layer changes, it moves around. As the sun moves around, or as the planet turns, the sun warms up a different section, and that end point is constantly changing. So you may only get you may get an hour talking to somebody, or you may get 2 minutes, or you may get 30 seconds. You may just hear stations coming in and going out and coming in and going out, depending on what the conditions are. As the heat dissipates during the evening, so as it gets cooler at night, those gas layers start to separate again, and the frequency at which you can transmit changes. So as that cools down, generally the maximum usable frequency drops down. So if you're on, say for example, you're transmitting on 28 megahertz to somebody in Italy, and the skip conditions change, you may find that you can't talk to anybody on 28 megahertz anymore. You have to drop down to 14 megahertz or 7 megahertz or 3 megahertz. Now, the lower in frequency that you get, sorry, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. So the lower in frequency you go, the longer the radio wave is. So henceforth, the longer that skip distance can be. So generally, the lower the frequency, the further the distance that you'll travel. There's all sorts of people that will argue with that, and you know, that's just basically, it's very, very basically how it works. Now, we actually get, in radio, we have access to these, what are called predictions. So we can watch how that D region in the ionosphere is going to change over time. And it kind of gives you a prediction of where would be the best place. So if I particularly want to work Japan, I can look at the graph, work out where Japan is, and it will tell me the time of day when I'm going to have the most chance of getting the correct skip conditions to reach that particular country. So that's how it works. Nice and easy. Once you get your head around it, it's not too bad. But this little Yaesu radio here, I've spoken to people literally all over the planet. I've even worked New Zealand from that radio on 50 watts out of my little, it's called a G5RV. It's an inverted V, and each leg of that is 20 metres long. 20 feet long. It's not a big antenna. Now, excuse me, that makes it resonant, so it works best on the 14 megahertz band, or 40 meters. 20 meters, good grief. Sorry, 20 meters. But the antenna itself will actually tune with my little tuner. You remember we switched in that tuner the other night? Let me just do it now. It's that one there. The little red symbol comes up on the display there to say it's tuner's in place. That allows me to use my antenna, which wasn't built for a specific frequency, to be used on other. So, sorry, the antenna is built for 20 meters, but with that tuner, it allows me to stretch that a little bit and use it on 40 meters. And actually, I can use that also on a bit of the 80 meter band and a little bit of the 10 meter band. So it works pretty well. Actually, quite a decent tuner. Let's go to that one. So yeah, pretty neat. Now, the other thing I was going to show you tonight is another little bit of a digital mode. So let me get it up. Boom, boom, boom. No. There we go. That one. And I want to enable the M780. So this is the bit of software. I remember, if you remember, I said the other night, we can actually send something called slow scan television. Now, what slow scan television is basically it allows you to send a picture, and what it does is it breaks that picture down into audio, a bit like a ZX Spectrum. If you ever had those growing up as a kid, you'd put the tape in and you'd hear that strange noise going on in the background. Well, this is a very similar thing. It converts the picture into audio and then it sends that audio via the radio. So let's switch across onto the part of the band that is reserved for slow scan television. Now, the process of sending this is actually really, really easy. So we just need to check, first of all, that nobody's sending an image. So you can check with me if I turn that on and turn that up. So it's just static there at the minute. So there's nobody sending any kind of image. So what we are going to do is we are going to go into our TX templates, which is our pictures that we can send. We'll pick a picture. That's me when I was a bit younger and a bit fitter. I've still got the bike. It's coming out again soon. I've actually got a project bike, which I might do a little thing with on the channel. We might build that because I've got the carbon fibre. It's a felt F6 carbon fibre. My partner's got a Bianchi, which is really, I love that Bianchi. Given the choice again, I might do a swapsy with her. But I've actually bought a little, nothing fantastic. It's a Carrera, but I've got it in pieces. I've got a box full of bits. I've literally got a bare frame to rebuild, respray and rebuild. So that might be the next little project on the channel. Anyway, back to radio, what we're here for. So we've picked out our picture here. That's actually taken at Silverstone. And you can see I've got my call sign on, because in amateur radio, we always have to send our call sign in the same mode that we're sending anything else. And we should always give our call sign. And I'm just saying CQ, 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 which is CQ. I want to seek you. Oh, is anybody there? And SSTV is the mode that we're using. So I am going to send that by just pressing this button here, TX. Bump. Radio hits into TX mode. Now what's happening with this software is it's actually, you might, I'm hoping it's not going to feed back the RF into the microphone, but it may do. I'll have to check on the live stream. So what this is doing now is it is sending that image. It's scanning each line of that image and it's turning it in to an audio file, effectively like an audio. So each colour has a note and each shade of that colour has a note. And it sounds, if you hear it, it actually sounds like a squeaky wheelbarrow. And I must admit, I didn't think ahead. Otherwise, I would have organised a little sound snippet of SSTV being sent. But there it goes. Sorry, I've got this. It's not Corona. It's definitely the vape. I had to mix a new bottle of Jollop this morning, and the nicotine thing is always a bit of a hit and miss thing. So anyway, I've remixed it and it's made me cough a little bit, but you know, so ho. So we can see that picture just slowly scanning down line by line. It takes it, depending on the mode, about a minute and a half to send an image. Now I did a test. There's actually what's called a web SDR. It's a radio that sits on the internet that you can access. It's based up in Peterborough, and it just sits there and listens, and you can tune it and you can listen into bits of the band. Now, the unique thing about that is that it has an SSTV decoder. And I sent this image, this particular image actually, in all the different modes. The quickest one takes about 6 seconds. Let me just turn that down. Quickest one's about 6 seconds. The longest one takes 12 minutes. And I assumed that the 6-second one would be the worst quality and the 12-minute one would be the best quality. Well, I was wrong. The 12-second one is the worst quality possible, but in between, the ones that take a minute and a half, there's very little difference between a picture that sends in a minute and a half and a picture that sends in 12 minutes, essentially. So I tend to stick to Scotty one, which is about a minute and a half for that picture. And I've had quite a few replies. If you actually check my Facebook wall, I've got a whole folder there of images, which are just SSTV ones that I've received. So yeah, that's an introduction to ham radio on the HF bands. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me switch back to the main camera. There we go. If there is something that you really want to see, either with radio or with IT or with cycling, whatever you want, I might do a show and tell on all the cycling kit, because that's quite involved. Some of those little computers and things like that you carry on the bike are pretty decent bits of kit. Anyway, if there's anything you want to see, stick it in the doobly-doo below. Like and subscribe to the channel, please, because that really helps us out, and we could do with a few more views. So please feel free to put us on your Facebook wall and share us out amongst your friends. Say, come and look at this Wally. He's spent a fortune and he's pretty crap. But we have a laugh. If there's something you want to see, let me know and we'll get it sorted. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I have for you tonight. So thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. Keep the channel going. And I'll see you next time. Take care.